Hello, you guys. Thank you so much for joining us for this Thrive Today webinar, Unwrapping the Gift of Appreciation. My name is Christy Herring. I'm part of the Thrive Today team, and I just want to thank you so much for joining us for this time. So this webinar is the third installment of a series we've been doing called Unlock Your Healing. And in this series, we've been looking at how the relational skills that we teach about at Thrive Today are often a really key missing piece when people are just stuck in their journeys of healing. You know, oftentimes we can't control the circumstances that cause us to have pain and wounding. But today we want to touch on something that we can control, which is how we view our circumstances. And so we're taking a look at skill 4, the skill of appreciation today. And we're going to be looking at how this skill actually has the ability to change the lens through which we see our life and the world around us. And this is not to minimize the challenges that we face or how big that these challenges are. But rather, this just gives us the ability to see beauty, to see goodness, to see the hand of God at work in midst of it all. So joining us for this conversation is our president and co-founder, Chris Coursey. And Chris actually got his start in ministry, helping people recover and get free from abuse and trauma. And he has almost 25 years of experience coming up with practices and implementing practices that help people to get free and to thrive in their life and relationships. So Chris, we are so thankful to have you bring all your expertise to the table and share with us today.
Thank you, Christy. I'm really excited for our time today, and I just look forward to what we're going to share.
Yeah, and you were saying, like, we just feel like this is going to be so hopeful, so life-giving. So yeah, we're really excited about it. I just want to mention a couple quick housekeeping items before we dive in. The first thing is that we are recording this. And so everybody who registers will receive a recording. If you are on Facebook Live, there's a link for how to record in the description. So you can click on that. And I encourage you to do that too if you want to be part of our Q&A, which we will have at the end of our conversation. And the Q&A is just going to be for the people who are joining us on Zoom. And the last thing I want to mention is if you are newer to Thrive Today and you're still figuring out some of the things we talk about, like what exactly are relational skills, we are going to give a couple simple resources, free resources on our website that you can check out to learn more. So just stay tuned for that at the end of our time together. All right, well, Chris, let's get started on talking about what appreciation is. You know, we had a webinar we did, I think, last spring where we talked even more about this, which people can check out on our webpage or on our YouTube channel. But can you give us just a brief snippet of what appreciation is and why this skill is so central to the process of transformation?
Yes, so appreciation is one of these relational skills that I'm really excited about because it's accessible. So you don't have to spend a lot of time to be able to use this skill. I call appreciation packaged joy, where we talk about unwrapping presents or gifts of joy, because basically, you know, when we remember times of joy, we remember those special moments, those special people, those special experiences where joy was, you know, part of that fun. You're activating this file in your brain. So your brain is actually responding as though you're reliving the moment all over again. And I just can't say that enough. Like, that's a big deal. That's really exciting. And so this is something we can do anytime, night or day. And I liken appreciation to my experience playing baseball in high school. In high school, I was a baseball player. And my sophomore year, I played first base. And the problem was I couldn't see the ball very well. So when people would throw the ball, I couldn't see it until the last minute. And sometimes I couldn't react fast enough and it would like hit me in the chest.
Oh, ow.
Not fun. This is a hard ball. Or when I'm batting, I couldn't see the ball until it was close enough. And by that point, your reaction time's not very good. So I finally broke down and had my eyes checked. And I have to tell you, when I put those glasses on the first time I played baseball, it was night and day. I could see the ball, and I could track where the ball was, and I could see it before it was like, 10 feet in front of me. It completely changed my game. It changed my offense as well as my defense. It changed everything. So when I think about appreciation, I think about just how this one skill, even though we focus on many relational skills at Thrive, this one skill changes everything. I cannot emphasize that enough. You see differently. Colors are brighter, sounds clearer. I can remember taking a walk recently with my wife and just listening to the birds singing. Like, I can remember growing up, I could care less about birds singing. It wasn't high on my importance scale. But now I love the sound of birds singing, a sunset, a sunrise. When you start practicing appreciation, your brain starts to notice things. It helps your brain really pay attention to the good stuff. And as we're going to talk today, that's really pretty much a life-changing skill that changes your relationships. It changes your mood. It changes how you deal with emotions and feelings. It changes your health. Your immune system is impacted by practicing appreciation. Your heart health is improved by practicing appreciation. On studies of gratitude and appreciation, even people who have heart problems, who are really not in good shape, when they start practicing some of these skills, they improve. It changes them. Even our cells, our DNA is impacted by this stuff. So like, all the way down, who God made us to be, down to the nth of who we are, is impacted by practicing appreciation. So this is a skill I'm excited to talk about today, because I think everybody's feeling it, Christy, as you and I were talking about earlier. Like, people are just feeling it. And our brain is, feeling the angst and the weight of what's happening in our world on so many different levels. And so appreciation is really our relational oxygen mask that we can put on for turbulence, and it helps us better navigate turbulence. So it's the purposeful practice, the focus of thinking about and feeling the good stuff. So we reflect on joy, we remember joy, we share it when we practice appreciation. And Christy, it's worth just distinguishing appreciation from gratitude, because they're both friends, they're complementary, they're both good. Gratitude is thankfulness. What am I thankful for right now? So I'm thankful for all of our friends who are with us today and watching and learning and just wanting to use this. Whereas appreciation will be what I feel when I think back on this time. I think back on the interactions. That's appreciation. Gratitude is, I'm thankful for this. I'm thankful for this beautiful day, and my windows are open in my office. I can hear those birds singing as we talk. That's what we're talking about. And both have very similar effects as far as our brain and body is concerned. So this is good stuff, and it's available like today, right now. We can use this skill.
Yeah, that's really encouraging, because it's simple. And I think because of that, you were saying earlier, you and I were talking, and you had mentioned, like, it can be easy to dismiss it because we think we know what it is. Yeah, I do that, or whatever. And so, I mean, we're encouraging people to, I guess, I don't know how you would say it, just to pause and take another look at what appreciation is, and to figure out, like, how can we insert this into our lives so it's not something we just dismiss, but we actually value it, because it has such a huge power to change things for us.
It does. And that is something I really hope people hear. Like, we tend to underestimate this skill because of familiarity. We know it. It's like talking about joy. Like, I know about joy. I've been reading about joy for years. I've been doing this stuff. But we almost forget the simplicity and the power of actually practicing it. So literally taking a few minutes to calm down, to think about the good stuff, to feel it. Just this morning, my sons and I was driving them to school. We got in the car, and my son decided, before we even pulled out of the driveway, to throw an empty yogurt container into the front seat. It did not bring me joy. I was like, what is this? What is, getting yogurt all over? I'm like, what is this? And immediately my relational brain just went off, and I was focused on the empty yogurt container. Like, why did my son do this? And so I asked my sons a question. I said, hey, what should we do to get some joy going here? Right? Because it's like, well, my brain's focused on a problem here. And they said, Daddy, I think we need some appreciation. So just taking the time then to share what are those times of joy? And again, we often do it with like within the last 24 hours. What were those moments or those windows of joy? And within just a little bit of time reflecting on some appreciation, everybody was in a nice, relational, peaceful, joyful place. We were glad to be together. The yogurt container was not a big deal anymore. And if we don't practice appreciation, then we end up getting stuck on the empty yogurt container that splashed yogurt all over your car. And we end up getting stuck on whatever it is. And there's no end. There's an infinite amount of things in this world that will rob your joy. So appreciation is being able to get back into my sweet spot, as I call it, my relational sweet spot, as we'll talk about today, which is where we all want to be.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And my husband, I'm going to steal it. He had this great analogy with one of our kids this week about like when we get fixated on the problem, it's like having, he's like, he'd had a penny and he's like, yeah, how big is this penny? I mean, it's not that big, but what if I put it right here? Like, how big is that penny? Like, it's everything. It's massive. I can't see beyond it. And so with appreciation, we're learning to shift what we're focusing on, which helps right size the problems that we have. And
I like that. What a great picture.
Isn't that a cool thing?
That is. What a good picture. I'll have to remember that.
Yeah. So Chris, we're talking about being stuck. We've all been stuck at one point or another, right? Where we feel like I just can't seem to get past this, to forgive, to get healed, whatever it is we're feeling and dealing with. And those things, like we said, they're very real. We're not here to minimize any of that. But what might it look like, on a practical level, someone's stuck and they need some appreciation? What are some signs that this is a key thing that's missing for them that could help?
One of the great byproducts of practicing appreciation is it's really training your attention. So, if I pour a glass of water on my counter, that water is going to just go to the lowest point, right? Gravity is going to work its course. The water is just going to kind of spill and gravitate toward wherever the lowest point is. So the byproduct of appreciation is, or the lack of appreciation, I should say, is when I'm focusing on what's wrong. So when my brain is not trained on appreciation, then my attention will go to whatever's not right, whatever's going wrong, whatever's frustrating, whatever's inconvenient, anything that basically robs our joy and our peace. Our brain pays attention to that. And then my brain pays attention to that. And my brain says, this is what's important right now. So it was like the yogurt container, right? Like that could have been the whole trip to school, just focusing on what went wrong. And there would not have been a whole lot of joy in that car. So being able to recognize it, and yeah, that was not a good decision by my son to do that. However, we're not going to get stuck there. Well, there's more going on. And so what appreciation does is it allows us to shift out of focusing on what's wrong, what's not right, what's bothering me, what's annoying me, and so forth. That's what appreciation does. And so I know my appreciation levels are lower than I want when I am focusing on the things that's bothering me or angering me or scaring me. And that's basically your brain, just your attention does what it's been trained to do, good, bad, or ugly. And often our brain has learned certain patterns based on our family or our community. So what kinds of things did my family pay attention to growing up? So if my family paid attention to wondering and worrying what the neighbors think, that's what I'm going to learn to pay attention to. I'm going to learn some really unhelpful patterns and habits. So appreciation is what redirects, and it doesn't just redirects, it actually helps me to have like that laser focus on the good stuff. And it doesn't mean, I think you said it well earlier, Chrissy, it doesn't mean that we're not like acknowledging the hard stuff. We're living in reality here. Jesus said there will be trials. You are going to have trials. Trials will come knocking on your door, but there's more going on here. And so appreciation is shining the light on, well, what else is going on? There's definitely some bad stuff or some scary stuff. So most of us just can relate to the fact that things are grabbing our attention that we really want to be let loose. And we don't want to be shackled to these things that are robbing our joy and our peace. And appreciation is really what helps to shift that and change that. And we can talk about it, right? But ultimately, as you said earlier, we have to practice it. We have to take some time and do it. And it's when we practice it, that's when things start to shift. We all have people in our lives that we know when we see them, they're going to tell us what's not right, what's wrong, what we did wrong, what we didn't do well, or whatever that may be. We all know people in our lives that are just kind of stuck. They're kind of stuck to that and chained to that mentality. And that's basically just what their brain has learned. But the good news is we don't have to be that way. We don't have to stay there, even if that's what we've learned because of the examples in our lives. The good news is we can update. Our brain is what's known as plastic or plasticity, which just means your brain can learn new routes and grow new cells. And so even just the practice of appreciation is what allows your brain to grow in new ways and to expand our joy, so to speak. So we can start to notice and feel and think about the good stuff. Even while we're surrounded by the bad stuff, we can still practice appreciation. And that's what sets appreciation apart from, say, like positive thinking. Like we just have to think positive thoughts. What appreciation does and why it's different than just simply positive thinking is because appreciation is actually your emotional, relational brain responding as though you're reliving the examples all over again. So that's what's different of just like white knuckling it. Like, well, I'm just going to like not acknowledge any of the bad stuff and I'm just going to like pretend it's not there. That's not sustainable, right? That has a short expiration date, a quick expiration date. Appreciation, which is the active thinking about, reflecting on the moments, the people, the experiences that brought you some joy. So one appreciation example would be just driving my sons to school and being able to, reflect and share together on what we enjoy. So my sons were thankful. One son was thankful for a friend of his that he got to play with yesterday on recess, and that was very meaningful for him. Another son was thankful for a discussion that we had recently as a family that was meaningful. My appreciation moment was being able to return to joy together and be glad to be together when the yogurt container kind of, didn't start us out on a joyful note, but thankfully we didn't get stuck there. So we can practice this. We can think about it, feel it, share it. And ideally we share it because we want to train our brain to learn to share the good stuff. Because what happens when you hear appreciation? When you hear appreciation, you start thinking about and feeling appreciation. So this is the gift that just keeps on giving, we might say.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And I just want to highlight, think it, feel it, I love what's been so helpful for me is bringing in the senses to it. Like I was talking with one of my kids this week about a memory that he had with his dad. And he was talking about actually was with a grandfather at this point in the memory, being on the beach, but he was remembering the wind was blowing so hard. We had to like hold our hoods over our heads. But I mean, he's getting into the senses, he's experiencing it, he's feeling it. And so there's something about that just, again, it gets us in the moment, which, like you said, it's training our focus and our attention to hone in on something that's good and powerful and encouraging versus, the negative things. And I'm thinking like when someone, back to why someone might need this skill or a tip off, it's like so often all we can see is the problem. And I'm sure we've all experienced it in ourselves or we've been with somebody and it's like, that is it. There is nothing else in the world except this problem. And so what I hear you saying is we are training our attention to focus on something other than the problem to just help build some encouragement, some strength, some capacity in our lives.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the beauty of it, Christy. As we practice appreciation, what it does is it actually helps us to stay ourselves while we navigate the hard stuff. And so you can see that in a sense, appreciation is the bridge to staying yourself. So if you want to be yourself when you're angry, when you're afraid, when you're disgusted, when you're feeling shame, when you're hopeless, whatever it is, or when you're even feeling alone, appreciation is the bridge to stay your relational self, even though you're navigating hard stuff. Because what'll happen is if you can't find the good stuff and hold on to the good stuff when the hard stuff starts to happen, you get lost. You lose yourself. And what'll happen then is problems and pain become bigger than your ability to stay yourself. And for God's people, that's really kind of our relational kryptonite in many ways, is we forget who we are. We are no longer the people that God designed us to be. We're not acting like the people he designed us to be because we're afraid or we're mad or we're triggered, whatever it is. I mean, you fill in the blank, right? You fill it in, that we're temporarily forgetting who we are. And so appreciation brings us back, reminds us who we are, reminds us who God is, and helps us to kind of live out that character, that Christ-like character that God is growing in us. So even though appreciation sounds so like simple, and it is really at the end of the day very simple, the benefits of appreciation really go all across the board when you just look at what's important to you in your life. Right. So I was asking someone this question earlier today, and I said, you know what, when you get to the end of your days, when you look back on your life, what is it you want to be able to see? And most people, when I ask that question, it's usually relational in nature. So it's not like, well, I'm glad I saved $1 million over my lifetime. No, it's usually like, I loved my family. I loved people well. It's usually some version of that, I just wanted to be a good steward with the relationships that I've been entrusted with. So really appreciation is what helps you be able to live and reflect that reality. And so how do you put a price tag on that? Like, if that's really like, all of us will have that time. One day we'll look back on our life and go, what did I do with the time that I have? Appreciation activates these things now, today. You can think about it, practice it, feel it, but you can do this with people in your life. You can express appreciation. You can call them, you can video call them, you can visit them over coffee, you can text them. Anybody can practice appreciation. And I find that when I practice this skill, some of the responses are people think I'm crazy because they think this guy must be on drugs. Why is he so happy? I'm like, I'm not on drugs. I'm just actually really happy, because appreciation anchors us to hold on to the good stuff. And then after, when people see I'm not on drugs, they're actually like, guy's actually a pretty nice guy, because it's like, he's a happy guy. And I like to use that as an opportunity to say, well, actually, this is the beauty of joy and appreciation, that you can actually hold on to the good stuff, even while you navigate the hard stuff. Mm-hmm. So the person that, I'm practicing appreciation with at the grocery store, they might not know that I'm having a really bad day. There's a lot of things going wrong today, but practicing appreciation makes people think you're having a good day, because you're relational, you're glad to be with them, and you can put words to that joy. It's one of those skills, Christy, I'm excited about because of how it's changed my life, how I've seen it change other people's lives, and what I believe this can do for God's people right now. This is one of those skills that we can practice today.
Awesome. Chris, can you give an example of someone you've worked with? Because you've worked with a lot of people who've had a lot of struggles, who've gotten stuck in lots of places, but an example of how this skill helps somebody get unstuck in their own journey.
I think about one person in particular. She was a young mother and a full plate, just having health issues, young children at home, so many challenges in her life, and she was just hurting. She was just struggling. And so one of the practices I encouraged her to start doing was appreciation. And I said, just make it simple. When you get up in the morning, reflect on it, share it with your children, practice with your husband, just, basically just insert it into your day wherever and however you can. It doesn't have to be long. You can just drop it in. And I think she was a little skeptical at first, like, really, that's the solution you're going to give me to all the stuff going on in my life right now? But she was motivated. And so it didn't take very long for her. Probably the first change that she noticed is it helped her stay present. So practicing this actually helped her stay present where she normally would have disconnected in some way, whether it's like turning to sugar or just somehow she would have disconnected. The practice helped her stay present. The other thing that happened is she started to enjoy her family more. So they weren't just like mouths I have to feed today and, bodies I have to clothe today, but I actually enjoy these people. So she started to enjoy her family. And she found that she could breathe easier. And what I mean by that is she realized like how tense she was, that she wasn't even aware of how tense she was. She started to notice that she could breathe. She could take deep breaths. She could actually like, and that was kind of new for her because she just didn't realize how shallow breathing, how much she was doing that. And so this ripple started in her life, and it just kept going relationally. Her family felt a difference. Her friends felt the difference. More importantly, she felt different. And it really gave her the bandwidth to start enjoying her life. I don't think she was enjoying her life. Everything just kind of felt like an obligation, which is how it feels when we're overwhelmed, right? It's just, we don't enjoy what we're doing. We just kind of go through the motions. So in a sense, she started to live life and started to experience joy and started to be able to share appreciation with people. Yeah, it really was a game changer. And this is just one skill. She just dropped in a little bit here, a little bit there. And yeah, it just changed her world. And I think she would probably say if she were here that she also just, it helped kind of turn the volume up and having a sense that God was with her and actually delighted to be with her. So she started to just have the sense like, yeah, I don't have to just do all the right things to please God, but I actually have a sense that Jesus is with me and he's actually enjoying me while I do the things that I'm doing. And yeah, pretty transformational for her.
Yeah, that's really cool. And it is cool. And it's the point we're trying to make is something really simple made a huge difference. And I know we have another friend who's shared his testimony. He was dealing with extreme depression for like 6 years, totally stuck in it. And there were a myriad of things that helped. But I think as you worked with him, appreciation was a key thing that you were working with him on, and he is free from depression. I mean, and it was 6 years, like a battle he thought he was never going to get free from. And that appreciation piece, which was such a key thing for him. So again, this is just really helpful stuff.
It is. And when I often introduce this to people, they're like, really? Like, that's what you're going to recommend?
Like, whoa, this is big time.
Like, seriously. But as people start to do it, that is really where the rubber meets the road, when people practice it and they feel it and when they share it. It really is. It is a game changer. And I tell people, don't take my word for it by any means. You start practicing and you start doing this. Start a journal. Practice it when you interact with your family or with friends. Start actively doing this. When I meet people who I perceive might be a little low on joy, I make it a personal mission to practice appreciation with them. I don't tell them what I'm going to do. I don't tell them my plan. I see it as, oh, okay, I'm going to practice some appreciation here. And so I will make it a point of inserting that in some way, shape, or form when I'm interacting with people who maybe are a little grumpy or just not enjoying life very much. I will make it like a personal mission. And there's no stopping what God can do when we have this lens. There's just, I believe the world would change if we practice this one skill would really, really change some things in our world.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you hit on that, because I was going to ask, I mean, there's somebody I know of who, I'm sure we all know lots of people who is a bit stuck and could use appreciation, but is resistant to appreciation. So would that be kind of how you would hit that? Is like, if someone's resistant to practicing themselves, how do you kind of incognito sneak it in
Yeah.
by practicing it with them?
Yeah, there's a certain percentage of people in my life that I do that with. They don't really know it. It is just when I, interact with them and see that in some way, shape, or form, they're just struggling. And when my brain's not in relational mode, I don't really value appreciation. It just seems like a foolish thing because I'm not in my relational sweet spot. So it's like, I don't know why people would want to do this. So when I do it, and I will normally find something I can appreciate about them and verbalize it and put words to that and be genuine. So I'm not like doing this in a fake or artificial way. I genuinely feel what I'm doing. And I feel that joy when I can verbalize that to people and even invite them. So what I do is I see invitation as an opportunity, and I like to invite people. Is there anything good that's been going on in your week? What's been a highlight of your week? So I don't say, hey, how was your week? Because I know their brain's going to give me 10 reasons why it was a bad week. So I will say, hey, what was a highlight from your week? Did anything good happen from your week? So I'm actually inviting them to focus on something good that happened, maybe a joyful moment. That's how I would invite it. I don't just leave it open-ended because I know by experience where that's going to go. And you might eventually get there, but it's going to take clearing out some trees to be able to get there. So just inviting people, giving them the opportunity and letting them share. And then saying, wow, I could see that was a really good thing. Like I could see how important that was for you. So I'm also wanting to draw attention to the effects. What happens when they share some joy, when they reflect on some appreciation? It's like, wow, I could hear it in your voice. That was a really important thing that happened to you this week. And I can share that with them. I can celebrate that with them. And implicitly what they feel is really interesting because their brain then associates, when I interact with this person, I feel better. Now they're not connecting it's because of appreciation, or I'm getting relational, I'm getting out of enemy mode. They just say, hey, when I interact with this person, I feel better. And that's kind of what I think as children of the living God, that's the feeling we want in this world, that when people interact with us, they feel better in some way, shape, or form. And again, it's implicit. They might not even realize it. If you can teach appreciation to people who are interested, by all means, do it and let them practice. But sometimes it's just more of, praying for people. They don't realize you're praying for them, right? We don't necessarily tell them. So same thing with appreciation. We're practicing. We're just not always announcing what we're doing, maybe at some point down the road. But in the beginning, especially if I don't know them very well, I'm not going to, well, I'm practicing this skill and, I'm not going to explain all of it. But I would practice it and maybe name it. Like, well, here's an appreciation moment from my week. Here's what happened, very similar to yours. There's just no stopping with a little creativity. There's no end to how you can spread the good stuff in this world. And I think that's a very hopeful message that I hope our friends really pick up on today, that you will find God will give you lots of opportunities to practice appreciation. But first, you have to make it a habit. So first, you have to start doing this in your own life before it's going to feel natural in all these other places. Because if you don't practice this on your own time in your own life, it's not going to feel normal. You're going to feel like you're forcing it. And then other people will pick up that you're uncomfortable because you feel like you're forcing it. Then they don't know what's going on. So just live it, breathe it, practice it, enjoy it. It becomes part of your character, part of your personality. You'll do this stuff without even realizing you're doing it. And that's a really exciting thing when you can see some of that fruit growing in your life.
Awesome. I love it. That's wonderful. Well, I want to get to some questions, and there's some good ones that have come in. So I'm just going to share a couple of resources if you want to learn more about appreciation, and a cool resource we have coming up. So let me just share my screen with y'all real quick. And the first thing is that Chris is going to be doing a skill practice class with us on Saturday, April 23rd. And it's from 1 to 2:30, and it should be Eastern Daylight Savings Time, EDT, not EST. I'm figuring out the difference between those two. But in this class, Chris is actually going to take you by the hand and lead you through a series of exercises so you can practice appreciation. So whether you just feel like I need a kickstart in my appreciation, or you're newer and you're like, I just don't exactly know what this looks like, this is a great way for you to come and to get some experience with growing the art of appreciation, or practicing the art of appreciation. And we had great feedback from our last one. I can't more highly recommend that you join us for this class. And then one of the things we're going to do is, everybody who takes the practice class, we're going to give you a big discount on our online Skill 4 courses. So these online courses are going to be where Chris continues to take you by the hand and lead you through exercises on developing Skill 4 at your own pace. And then he gives some coaching and things like that. So these are fabulous courses, and you'll get a discount so that you can continue your practice beyond the practice class. So those are not available yet, but they'll be coming this spring. So just stay tuned for that. And if you sign up for the practice class, you will definitely get information about it. And then we want to mention, if you want to practice appreciation with others, we have a Bible study book, Relational Skills in the Bible, that Chris wrote with one of our Thrive Today trainers, Amy Brown. And so this is a fabulous way to dive in the Bible and actually practice relational skills in community. And you'll get some great practice with the skill of appreciation through this book. Just want to mention, because we're talking about healing and people being stuck in healing, we have a lot of people in our audience that are counselors or pastors or coaches. So if you are not already part of our counseling audience and you want to stay updated on resources that we have for counselors, coaches, etc., you can go to this bit.ly link, Thrive Counselors, and just put in your information and stay updated on our counseling resources. And the last thing I just want to mention is, if you were newer around here and you're still figuring out what relational skills are, I want to encourage you to check out our 19 skills page. Chris gives an introductory video on what the skills are. There is a video on each of the 19 skills we teach and train people in, as well as resources. So that's a great overview. And then we also have some helpful information on our facts page so that you can learn a little bit more there. So with that, we are going to say goodbye to our Facebook Live friends. If you're on Facebook Live and you want to join our Q&A, we encourage you to register for the webinar and hop on Zoom. So we just thank you so much for joining us. Okay, and we are going to dive in questions with those of you who are live with us on Zoom. So Chris, the first thing I want to ask you while I'm looking at some questions is, someone made the point that with this young mom you were working with, that it seemed like quieting was kind of a part of the step. And I know sometimes, like, we might try to do appreciation and it feels clunky or it's not quite working. And there's different skills that can be a part of the picture. So could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. One of the effects of appreciation is I can better quiet. And so for a lot of people, quieting is another one of those skills that's kind of just slowly fading from our world. And what that means is we have a lot of things that just make it hard to quiet, right? So for a lot of people, when they try to quiet, they try to rest, it just doesn't feel natural because they're not used to it. They just find that it ends up being frustrating or unsatisfying just because they don't feel like they can do it. So what appreciation does is it actually facilitates it. It leads to rest and quiet. And so that's because of just what it's doing to your mind and your attention, as well as your body. So it's like really physiologically changing you and impacting you, which makes it easier to quiet. So for the young mom, yeah, it was actually, she could easier practice appreciation than she could resting or quieting. So what she found was, when she would practice the appreciation, it allowed her to be able to quiet. It made the quieting more accessible. Whereas before, when she tried, she just ended up getting frustrated because of a to-do list or just lots of reasons. So this made it easier. So I encouraged some people, the high energy people, they maybe need to practice appreciation while they do stuff, and then they can go quiet a little easier. Low energy people, they just need to kind of find that nice quiet place. They can practice some appreciation and maybe with some soft music, and then they can it's easier to rest. So I encourage people to like play around with it and see what works best for you. But when you add this spice of appreciation into the mix, what happens is you will find that quieting is more accessible to me than it would be otherwise. And it does have a calming, a soothing effect, which makes it easier for people to be able to rest. So I like to insert that skill to help people rest.
Perfect. Yeah. And it's interesting because, like you said, in her case, she needed the appreciation, help quiet. And in someone else's case, it might be the opposite. They might need to quiet first to be able, we were just talking about, like you said, kind of play with it, that I had made the comment, there's an art to the science. There's a science behind these skills, but there's an art of how we implement them. And a lot of it is self-discovery of learning how we work, what we need. So again, I love that concept of playing with it, which invites us to even just enjoy the journey of playing with it and discovery.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
Awesome. Okay, another question is, in another setting, I'm learning about 10 relational needs, and one of them is appreciation. True, authentic appreciation, especially from people who are near and dear, is truly transformational and can touch my heart deeply. I wonder if we develop skills that aim at the other 9 needs, it might be also significant and powerful. I can provide a list of desired, but maybe the question is, does our need for appreciation and to give appreciation supersede other relational needs? Or perhaps is it one of a number of relational skills that can truly enhance our living? So does it supersede it, or is it just one that can enhance?
It's probably a little bit of both, to be honest with you. What I think why it's a good starter for people as you would look at any kind of relational list is one of the things, the attributes of appreciation is it helps us to get relational. Right. So it helps me to be relational. It actually turns on those circuits in my brain that my colleagues call relational circuits. And when my relational circuits are on, that's where I can learn, I can receive, I can have empathy and compassion. This is where we tend to think about like reflecting my heart, right? The heart that Jesus gave me. When the circuits are not on, you're not going to see the good stuff in my character. I'm not in a place to learn. It's just not going to go very well. So if you want to instill any kind of relational character habits or training, you really want people to be relational. That's just, I can't stress that enough. So, because if people are not in their relational sweet spot, then it's just not going to go well. People are not going to be able to glean and learn and grow and change and heal in the ways that you might want people to. So whenever I do any kind of training or ministry of any sorts, I'm always inserting at the very beginning, practicing appreciation and just kind of dropping it in as we go. And that's going to be one of the first skills people learn, because I know that's going to set the tone for what happens here. So you definitely want that to be at the front end of what you're doing, but then you also want to include it. Because there's times, you think about a student in class, student can only learn so much information before the student starts thinking about, the playground outside the window, and they're just not there. They're mentally or emotionally, their attention's not there. But practicing appreciation is refreshing, it's invigorating, it's restorative. So you drop it in what you're doing, and people are going to get a lot more out of whatever it is you're trying to help them learn or do. So it's just one of those skills. You really can't overuse appreciation.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So Chris, one of our viewers is saying, I'm a bit new to all this, but what's the best way to quiet, as that seems to be rather fundamental. And we should mention that if you, we'll let Chris answer, but if you go to our 19 skills page, you can click on skill 2 and you'll see a couple free webinars and things like that. So that will also give you some more information on that skill.
Yeah, that is a good question. So quieting is just like the purposeful pause where your body and your mind can in a sense, have a reset. You can be still, you can calm. So you can see quiet as resting or calming. And this is we would see it as a relational skill that we can practice. And so if I have that skill, I can pause when I need to. I can go take a 60-second quiet moment to be still. If I don't have it, then I'll avoid quieting, or I just won't do it, or I won't even see the value of it. And so quieting is low energy resting time. It's neurotransmitter of serotonin is very much like what's connecting to rest and quiet, helps us feel peaceful and calm. So quieting is just kind of a foundational skill, but it's a skill that's often hard for us to be able to practice. And so appreciation really helps to complement that. And yeah, that the resources that Christy said are really good from the website. We've got habit builder courses. Like we've got, oh, Christy, I don't know how many exercises that are put into those habit builder courses to really help people practice the quieting. So ideally you would just practice and then notice the effects of quieting and how does it feel? And the goal is to make it a habit. So it starts to feel natural and it just feels like, yeah, I need a little quiet right now. I'm feeling like I need a breather.
Yeah. And we like to, I'm glad you mentioned that. We like to, the goal is to make it a habit, but just to put it out there, when you start practicing appreciation or quieting, if it's not something you've done, it can very likely feel clunky, uncomfortable, awkward. So we just want to get that out there. That's normal. It's totally okay. That's why we practice. You first learn how to dribble cones or a ball through cones. And it's like, what am I doing? I'm knocking the cones over. This isn't going well. You know, you develop the skill, you get better at it with time. Same thing with these skills. So, Chris, someone's mentioning Ann Voskamp. You know, she had that book, 1,000 Gifts, and it focused on giving thanks as a key to transformation, which was one way to think and act relative to appreciation, allowing and practicing gratitude in the midst of whatever is happening. Is this the same or similar to practicing appreciation, or is there any important distinction?
Yeah, I think the main distinction, and I think anything like that book that really helps people to practice it is good. Can't go wrong there. What we're talking about is complementary to that. So like gratitude is, I am thankful for that this new movie is coming out that I want to go see, right? But appreciation would be going to the movie with you, with my friend, and then being able to experience that together and then go out for coffee afterwards and talk about that. So the appreciation would be the joyful moment that's mixed in there. So we can have gratitude, which is very good. And we can also practice appreciation. But the thing you want to do, whether you're practicing gratitude or appreciation, is notice its effects. You want your brain to notice, how do I feel after doing that? So all the exercises we write in our books or our curriculum of any sort always includes the step of pay attention to your body. Your body is the canvas for your brain. How does it feel after doing that gratitude? What did you notice? What changed from when you started? So you wanted your brain to pay attention. That's part of making this a habit, because you notice you feel better in some way, maybe more peaceful, more present, more relational. And so what it's doing is it's training your brain so that when you're not feeling those things, your brain says, hey, wait a minute. The last time I was feeling this way, I did this, and then I felt better. So if you're going to do those kinds of books or resources or assignments, basically just include the step of thinking about, feeling, and sharing. That's the sequence. That's a very brain-friendly sequence to build habits. So a lot of them just stop after think about it. And then again, that's good. Like nothing wrong. If you're just doing that, that's still very good. But you're going to actually can take it a little bit farther down the road, thinking about it, feeling it, noticing how do you feel, even sharing it with someone else. So share that with a friend. That's where you're going to get even more mileage, more benefit from the practice. So the benefit of gratitude is just in by itself is good, thinking about the good stuff, but you keep things alive when you keep reflecting on them and feeling them and sharing them. So that's the part I would add to that. You're going to get more out of something like that. Think about it, feel it, share it.
Great. Okay, that's helpful. Chris, any distinctions between practicing appreciation with people and God?
You know what? I think both are excellent. We should do both. I find when we practice it with God, sometimes he wants us to go share it with our people, with our community. So it's a win-win. It might be hard. Some people find it's easier to share with God and it's harder to share with people. Some people find it's easier to practice with people. It's harder to practice with God. I would suggest both. Do both. And again, if I have, in my life, if I have a really good experience practicing this with God, I want to share it with my family, and I'll make it a point to share that story at the dinner table. Like, you guys aren't going to believe I had this really neat interaction with Jesus, and here's what I did. Here's what I noticed. Here's what, what happened. I want to share it. The goal is to share it both ways. We also want to share it with God. Like, wow, God, this was really good. What happened for my day? And again, the goal would be notice what happens when you share this. So I had someone practice this recently. They were practicing interacting with Jesus, and I asked them to ask Jesus a question, and it was, well, Jesus, what are you thinking or feeling while I share this with you? So what are you thinking and feeling? So what's happening? What does Jesus want you to know about what he thinks or feels as he's listening to you? So that step, again, it deepens the relational connection. It deepens the bond. So win-win. Ideally, you do both, but it tends to be easier one way than the other. So we practice to get better at both would be the goal.
And would there be any difference in how we approach it with God and how we approach it with a person?
Yeah. So one of the things that you'd find, it's going to be harder with God when I'm not in relational mode. So even though practicing appreciation helps me get relational, ideally, the people who can do this with God tend to be really good at already doing it with people, so it feels natural. Where it gets hard for people trying to do this with God is they don't have a lot on file. Maybe Jesus still feels safer than people, so I'm willing to do this with Jesus. I'm not willing to do it with people. But if you've had a family, for example, that just did this stuff, it's going to feel very natural to do this with Jesus. Just because it's all, you've already got some circuitry already laid there. It's like, well, of course I could do this with Jesus. Why wouldn't I? So yeah, as far as the effects, the outgrowth of it, I would say doing it with God really comes down to being able to stay relational. Like with people, I can slip into enemy mode, but I can still stay with them and practice this and kind of fumble my way through it. When I go into enemy mode, I lose all awareness of God being there. So when I lose all awareness of God being there, it's going to be hard unless I can get relational again. Sometimes that happens because we have pain, or sometimes there's good reasons this happens. There's always good reasons it happens, whatever the reason is. But the question would be, you want to stay relational if you're going to try this with Jesus. If you get into non-relational mode, you're going to lose all awareness. Theoretically, he's there because the Bible says he's there. But experientially, it's like, well, I don't know. I think he left. I think he's gone. Well, no, he's there. But where the breakdown happened is you're no longer aware of him being there. So that would be where that could happen. We just want to get good at being able to return to relational mode. So that would be the piece I would say. We just sometimes need a little practice on that.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. Someone was asking back to your yogurt cup, empty yogurt cup experience. What if you're experiencing something like that on a regular basis, but not always from a child, maybe a spouse? And also they might be asking, is there another skill to be coupled with appreciation that would help?
Yeah. So, sometimes this can be hard in life, like in with a spouse, because it's right in front of you. So the people, if I don't have good return to joy skills, what happens is I kind of drop into these temporary pits of my emotions, and it's hard to get out of that in order to be able to practice. So appreciation as a skill helps you get relational. Appreciation helps you to stay present. Appreciation helps you be able to do what's important to do in a moment. Where you have something that's constantly in front of you and there's history, that's often where we need some Jesus healing in some way. Maybe we need some healing in some of those wounds that are there, because your brain always looks back to predict the future. So if I've got some history with this person and I haven't recovered from, I haven't gotten God's peace in those areas, guess what's going to happen? It's not going to take much for you to get the trigger activated in that moment. And then a conflict is pretty close by when that happens. So yeah, the skill would be really maybe getting some God peace. What we call skill 13 is seeing some of what God sees. So getting some peace in some of those places of wounding. Sometimes it helps just to ask the Lord, how does he see your spouse and what does he want you to know about that? What does he see when he looks at your spouse? So there's things, there's definitely other skills that I find will help you get more out of it. But with the return to joy issue, if that's just a hole that I keep, it's a pothole that I keep bottoming out on every time I go over it, learning to return to joy from some of these emotions can actually help me better practice appreciation, because I can stay connected or quickly reconnect when I'm not in a joyful place with people. So, but appreciation really facilitates all these other skills. So as you practice appreciation, you're going to be better able to learn and use those other skills that would be complementary, like even the quieting. So, when you get frustrated and your brain goes into enemy mode, if you can quiet, then definitely that quieting is going to help you. Then you can practice appreciation. So they all help. It's just kind of wherever you're at. It really comes down to where you are and what the needs are for navigating your situation. That's a good question.
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you, Chris. Last question. This is a manual prayer. We start that with, and if you're not familiar with that, that's just a prayer processing of connecting with Jesus and getting some healing over pain and wounds, but it starts with appreciation. That's how we start it. And Carl Lehman encourages us to avoid appreciation that has splinters. Sometimes it's unavoidable. When we remember joyful moments, we easily may go into feeling of loss because we don't have it anymore. So any comments on splinters that can goof up appreciation moments?
Yeah, so splinters are where there's some like pockets of pain, maybe even some unprocessed pain in there. So what happens is people start practicing appreciation with a family member. It's a memory. It's a wonderful memory, but in this case, maybe the family member has passed on. So they're feeling the joy. It's wonderful. Then they start missing the family member. Now they're kind of caught in an oil slick of attachment pain where they're sad. Now their relational circuits have gone off. So that can definitely happen. Sometimes I like to tell people joy can thaw us out in some ways. So joy starts to warm us up in places and we're much more aware of pain. Or even purposely, thinking about appreciation might bump into what Carl calls a splinter. So the goal would be to really try to find those safe appreciation memories in the beginning. Find those ones that are kind of protected appreciation memories that are just, you can practice it. You don't have to worry about it leading into some pain in some way, shape, or form. If it happens live with people, then I will do a couple things. One is I would have them go back to what they did enjoy. If they're able, if they've got the capacity, I'll say, okay, I see we've bumped into some loss here and that's really hard. So let's just pause and take a breather. Now let's try to go back to what was special about this memory. If they can, some people can. Others, it's like, okay, but you remember that other one you mentioned earlier? Let's go back to that one, or let's find a new one. So it can happen. It does happen. We just want to acknowledge it and name it. I see we bumped into this. Yes. Let's quiet and let's see if we can find another one. And I find when that happens, we're the kind of people that we are sad about loss, right? We can be sad about loss. So I tell people, you know what? It's good to feel it and share it. And so if we do need to work through some of that, we work through it. But as building a habit, I would say start with those safe appreciation memories as much as possible, and work through the splinters and share the splinters with people where you feel safe that you can do that. That deserves its day in court, we might say. So it's worth, working through that and sharing that as well.
Awesome. Well, we are going to wrap up. I just want to mention there are a lot of resources in the chat. I'm going to send some resources in an email to those of you, well, you all registered because you're here. So, but I want to mention it can feel overwhelming. And so we just encourage you, if you're feeling overwhelmed, all these different things you could look at, we just encourage you, pray, ask God, pick one resource. I mentioned this at an event we had last week. Our resources are not going anywhere. They will be here next week, next month, next year. So just start somewhere and just begin your journey, but you can't tackle it all at once. We don't expect you to, it's not possible. So just a breather on that. Chris, thank you so much for all your insight and sharing everything with us. And we are so thankful for you for being with us. It's been great to have you. I'll let Chris say our final word.
Yes. Well, thank you, Christy. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you just for all your amazing help. Thank you, friends, for joining us. I'm excited and just pray the Lord will bless you as you start practicing the skill and sharing the good stuff with a hungry world that needs this. So thank you for your time. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, we hope you have a great day. We look forward to seeing you in the future. And thank you so much again for joining us. Bye-bye.